Western Ag Network on the road in San Diego at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association Summer Business Meeting. Brought to you by Ag Risk Advisors.
As Western Ag Network is back out on the road this week, we're attending the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting here in San Diego, California. This week, cattlemen and women are addressing key issues impacting the livestock business, and we caught up with several of those volunteer leaders discussing what those priorities are. But I should mention our coverage this week is brought to you by Ag Risk Advisors. For more on all they do to provide risk management solutions for farmers and ranchers, visit agriskadvisors.com. Well, as I mentioned, we were able to catch up with some outstanding volunteer leaders this week in San Diego. Here are a few of those conversations. Continuing our on-the-road travels this week in San Diego at the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, one of the volunteer leaders who travels out and about representing cattle producers across Region 5 for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is a face and voice familiar to so many in Western Ag Network country, that being Mr. Jim Stein Biser from Sidney, Montana is joining us. And Jim, it's a lot of water right here. It's been a little wet back home, a little precipitation, but it's definitely warming up. But as we get ready for the summer business meeting, how are things back there in northeastern Montana for you this summer?
They look really good, Lane. We're getting not a huge abundance of rain, but timely rains. They just keep coming. Turned off now, but man, if you can get rain till the 1st of July, you got your grass made. And it was a little hard on grasshoppers. They're still there. But they're a little thinner in some places anyway than they were. Some places not quite so good,
Yep.
but yeah, looks good.
Well, hopefully there's some hay and again some good grass here this fall for fall grazing. But obviously we're hearing reports from producers from across the nation, but particularly Region 5, which you now represent. You assumed this role being elected by your fellow producers during this past year's Cattle Industry Convention in Florida. We were in Orlando. But I guess, so what has been the eye-opening experience stepping up into this national leadership role from serving on the state level in Montana for so many years? I guess, what has this process been like, and what are some of the issues you've been representing producers not only in Montana but across much of Western Ag Network country?
You know, this region is very similar. Each state is very similar to the other, but there are differences, and so the scope is broader, covering a little wider, broader issues, and learning a lot. I'm still at the beginning of this gig and still learning a lot, but getting to know folks a little better and looking forward to doing some traveling out and about this winter.
Well, obviously, a lot of cattle producers here this week have been talking about some of the wins that maybe they're seeing. Again, some of those wins are some good calf prices, so there's a plentiful supply of hay, but also some wins out in Washington, D.C. with the U.S. Supreme Court. We saw that Chevron deference overturned. From your perspective as a volunteer leader, but also as a rancher yourself, how does that Chevron deference ruling really impact you, but all the producers out in the countryside?
I think it's going to be huge, Lane. I mean, way bigger than we can imagine. Congress has used agencies to make some of the difficult decisions on some unpopular policy, and now with this Supreme Court ruling, they're going to have to be a little more exact in their lawmaking, and they're going to have to hear the static. If they're going to vote this way to make policy that's unpopular with some folks, they're going to have to make those votes rather than just giving it to agencies to make those difficult decisions. I think this is going to be huge. You know, there'll be no more of this telling us what to do and making us pay for it too.
And obviously, Jim, that's just one of the many issues that NCBA has been busy working on. But before I let you get back to your busy time here at the summer business meeting, I guess, what's a message you have for those cattlemen and women out across Region 5 that you now represent about just being active, having their voices heard, and bringing policy forward? Because really, that's the meat and potatoes of this week's event, is the policy creation gets its start here at the summer business meeting.
Absolutely, Lane. In fact, we're just about ready to go into our caucus meeting, and a couple of states have told me that they want to bring forward some resolutions and talk about them at our caucus meeting prior to tomorrow's vote in committee. So that's one of the big roles we play is help surface those issues. And you know, as people get to know me better, we'll have some more conversations with each of these states, and you know, a group of states working together can solve a lot more problems than us individually.
Yeah. Well, again, Jim, thanks for joining us. And again, a lot of work taking place here this week in San Diego as the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting gets underway. And hey, I should mention a big shout out to our friends at AgRisk Advisors for bringing you all of our on-the-road coverage this week from California. Joining us here today is Tom Harrington, president of the Colorado Cattlemen's Association. And Tom, you took the helm of the association here once the 157th Colorado Cattlemen's Association wrapped up. I guess, how are things going as you serve as president of the nation's oldest livestock association?
Well, since convention has been kind of quiet, we kind of got back to the ranch, back to work, getting cows moved around. And like you say, we should be home putting up hay, but thankfully got a good crew at home and they're hitting it hard. So, we're still have the same issues that we're dealing with even prior to convention, but we'll keep plugging away.
You call Carbondale, Colorado area
Yep.
home?
So I take care of the Crystal River Ranch there and have some cows of our own, and we've been in Carbondale for 17 years now.
How are things looking this, I guess, summer as we kind of move into July? It's going to get hot, but how are things looking?
So we've had a really good spring. Unusual moisture for us in June. Hay is good, pasture's good, stock water's good, so can't complain. Things are pretty rosy for us right now. We don't always have that benefit, but being blessed is great.
Now, obviously, we're down here at the summer business meeting, policy creation being the key focus of the meeting for cattle producers here this week. But at the CCA convention, obviously, policy is the backbone of the organization as well. And one of those new policies that was created reflects something that's been going on in Montana, which they're calling the Producer Profitability Initiative, and CCA is calling it the Sustainability of Livestock Industry of Colorado. I guess when we're looking at trying to keep people in business and provide opportunities, why does the Colorado Cattlemen's Association believe it's so important to really highlight the need for programs and keeping people in business out in the countryside?
I think the most important thing for us is just keeping the generational progression going, keeping family ranches, just that, and having more programs to give them more options, more ways to stay in business and remain sustainable. We're very focused on programs with Colorado Cattlemen's Association, educating the public, educating those that are just naive to what we do for a living and what we provide to them. So we're hopeful that this initiative or this directive will keep pushing us in that direction.
Obviously, we can't not talk about wolves. Our network's Rachel Gable keeps all of our listeners on radio up to speed on all the challenges and everything that pops up when something new with the wolf issue comes about. But since voters approved the introduction of wolves, it's been a challenge. Let's just share an update over the last few weeks of what CCA is up to and advocating for cattle producers out across the landscape.
So we discussed it at length at our convention. The Wildlife Committee went through it quite a bit, had some good commentation by CPWs there. They are our partners, there's no question, but they're doing what they're directed to do. They're trying to do it the best they can, and we're having to just deal with it. We would like to see some things move forward with perhaps defining chronic depredation and actually making that a true definition. Compensation is still being somewhat of a challenge, but many are being compensated for sure. It's just the challenge of it, trying to do your everyday living, making it on the ranch, and then to have another challenge thrown at you. So those poor folks up in the north that are being, forced to deal with it right in their backyard on a daily basis, it's definitely a challenge.
Well, and as I mentioned, that was a ballot initiative approved by Colorado voters. There's a few other ballot initiatives that are very concerning for livestock producers, not just in the cattle industry, but across the board.
Well, and it's proven that, if they can't pass it legislatively, then they go to the people. The ballot initiative is something that the people are probably not going to let go of. It gives them some power, and sometimes that's great, sometimes not so great. The fur ban is there's a proposition up for that, and what people may not realize, and Denver has kind of jumped on, is I think they actually defined it as the no hat campaign, because fur felt in a cowboy hat. So they're trying to just kind of bridge some gaps there that might get them on our side.
Yeah.
The slaughterhouse ban, that's going to put a lot of people out of business for a very regional slaughterhouse for lambs, an employee-owned business. So that's going to be, pretty impactful if that goes through. It's really tough with mountain lion, big cat hunting. They did that with the spring bear years ago and what that impacted the livestock industry. We know it'll do the same or worse with the mountain lions. So it's tough, but cattlemen just keep plugging at it, and CCA hopes to help in any way we can.
Yeah, and that was going to be my last point, is just the importance of involvement from volunteer leaders like yourself and membership as a whole to tell your story to the populace, because there's a whole lot more people in Colorado and other states that are not involved in livestock production, but they all depend on food.
That's the truth. We provide so many things to them besides just food. Big open spaces and vistas, places to go camp and recreate, just going to a rodeo. It's tied into our heritage, and people like doing those kind of things. So the ecosystem's provision from the cattlemen and the ranchers, people need to realize that, if you run the ranchers off and it becomes pavement, it doesn't come back.
Yep. Very, very well said. Well, Tom, thanks for joining us here in San Diego, and good luck this week, and good luck getting hay up as well.
Yeah, we're about halfway, so we keep plugging.
Well, friends, again, we're going to have more of our on-the-road conversations this week from San Diego throughout the week. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure and subscribe to all of our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, X, which formerly Twitter, along with our YouTube channel as well. Just search Western Ag Network.
Ready for a real PRF partner?
He was willing to track us for a year and provide that data back to us for a year. That's a guy making a pretty big investment.
At Ag Risk Advisors, this isn't our first rodeo. We are one of the most experienced in pasture rangeland forage. Honesty, commitment, trust. Many companies use these words. At Ag Risk Advisors, we earn them.
Well, it's clear that local input in addressing the concerns from producers out in the countryside is the backbone of the grassroots policy taking place this week. And we've been talking about it for quite some time. Producer profitability, that's an initiative spearheaded by the Montana Stock Growers Association, and that conversation has been trickling down here in San Diego as well. Joining us here today is President of the Montana Stock Growers Association, John Grandy. And John, the summer meeting really is a time where grassroots policy is brought forward from states like Montana or all the other state affiliates to the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And I guess from your perspective, how vital is the policy making process and just the conversations that occur during a meeting, especially the summer meeting?
Well, it's very vital, Lane, and that's one of the important things down here. Is the annual convention, which is a very important thing and a great deal, but it's such a big thing, and there's so many things going on. There's the policy process, there's the trade show, there's educational things. That there's just a lot going on. Here you have a smaller crowd and a little more focus on just the policy process, and so that allows you to build some better relationships and really work on the meat of these things.
Now, obviously, we joke that there's a lot of work to be done at home. I need to be home haying. I think I could agree on that, but and you have a lot going on too. All of us are busy, but from your perspective as a volunteer leader, and I've been using that term a lot because I think people forget that you are volunteering to be in these leadership positions to advocate and advance the industry. How important is it to take time away and to dedicate time as a leader and especially in the policymaking process?
Well, you're exactly right when we talk about, where I live, where we start at a mile high and go up, and it's been a cold spring. So I talk to so many people that, well, it was good to get done haying. And well, I started haying the day before I left to come down here. So we're even further behind than sometimes. So yeah, it'd be nice to be home working on some of that. But no, there's a reason why we're here. And it is about getting to know people and build those relationships. And that's how you get these things done. and there are some important things, and sometimes we lose sight of that, particularly as jaded as some of our politics are today, that there's a reason why we're involved in this, that there are some very important issues that we're dealing with, and it matters how we set our policy on these things.
Now, it's been a very busy morning with committee meetings. I believe you attended the live cattle marketing meeting. What were some of the policy discussions and topics that were brought up and put forward from that committee?
And some of it was not new policies, but existing policies, but how we're going forth in enacting those and working on them. You know, we've been working on better instrument grading for over 25 years now, but that's still something that's in process, and we're still working on that, getting that grading more objective, more consistent. That's an important thing. Another very important thing is just here recently, the CME came out with new expanded limits on both the live cattle and feeder cattle contracts. We have a lot of concern about those. And fortunately, the CME folks have been very willing to listen. We're having productive conversations with them about trying to take a closer look at those, because those expanded limits, they lead to the possibility of huge daily moves in those contracts, which if you're using those as a hedger, obviously that opens you up to a lot bigger margin calls. We have a lot more people moving towards the LRP, which is a good thing, and one of the things we're working on is improving that LRP contract. But the CME, to me, are actually shooting themselves a little in the foot. If there's more risk of higher margin calls on CME contracts, that's all the more reason for people to move to LRP, and there should be a place for both.
Now, another big initiative, the Producer Profitability Initiative, we've talked a lot about that on Western Ag Network, shared a lot of the findings that have come out with those 14 meetings that took place across Montana. We saw Colorado. We discussed that earlier in our conversation with Tom Harrington from Colorado Cattlemen's Association. They adopted a similar resolution, and that theme was brought down here as well to the meeting. Can you share an update on where that is and what the steps forward are going towards on the national level with that initiative for Montana?
You bet. So the things that we have focused most on in producer profitability is attractive tax climate, most specifically getting rid of the death tax, labor issues generally, but including guest worker labor, the H-2A visa, those type of things, barriers to entry for new people. These things are all in NCBA policy already. You know, the NCBA policy agrees with what we're trying to do in Montana. So we came down here with a directive to not set new policy, because as I say, it's already in NCBA policy, but just to ask people that maybe we look at these things in a little more strategic way and focus on that, make it a little higher priority. We brought that directive. That directive was actually tabled in committee this morning, which is a little disappointing to us, but we have to look at the reasons why. We've had great support for this, so it wasn't tabled so much because people are opposed to it as much as what's the right way to move forward with this. And we are just beginning. We're going to talk about it more tomorrow. Every 5 years or so, we develop a beef industry long-range plan. We've got one in place right now. It mentions producer profitability. We're going to start tomorrow working on a new one, which hopefully will be put in place by this winter. And we need to talk tomorrow about how do you take the points that we had in those policies in that directive and actually get them incorporated better into the long-term strategic plans. If we pass a directive, the directives go off the books in a year. So it's a kind of a short-term directive to people. This is what we need to look at now. If we get this prioritized in the strategic plan, that's a lot stronger approach for the next 5 years. So again, we would have liked to have got that directive passed. We're a little disappointed that it was tabled, but there's a lot of support for what we're trying to do, and it's still just moving forward in a little different way.
Well, John, obviously a lot of busy work going on, and as you said, the Producer Profitability Initiative continuing to move forward from Montana. We're seeing a lot of other states adopt that and consider adopting it, but what is your last message just for our viewers, not only from Montana, but across the nation here today?
Well, just it's a great time to be here. It's a great time to be in the cattle business. You know, we are, the reason we're moving forward with the Producer Profitability Initiative is because of all the challenge we face, and there's plenty of them, and we're addressing them. At the same time, you know, a lot of the country, most of Montana's seen some moisture, not quite so much where I live, but most of the state, you know, people have grasshoppers, but not as bad as the last few years. The cattle markets are pretty good. There's a lot of positive things, and we just need to keep driving that to make those things better.
Well, again, John Grandy, thanks for joining us here today. And we're going to have more conversations from on the road here in San Diego at the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, impacting the lives of cattle producers out in the countryside. A lot of information sharing taking place here in San Diego during the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting. And joining us here today, Mr. Jack Berrer, President of the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association. Jack, you just walked out of a luncheon. The steaks were pretty delicious, by the way.
Very good.
But I guess there was some information coming out about the investment in the beef checkoff. I guess, what were some of the key highlights you took out of that, and really the takeaway from the impact that the beef checkoff has on producers out in the countryside?
Well, it's always good to see some results on the beef checkoff, and we know it's a great thing we have going for us, and they did a new return on investment, and last time I think they were saying it was around $11.70 return for every dollar we put into it, and now it's up to $13.41 for every dollar put in and stuff. So it's really good. I mean, they were showing the demand and how well that's doing, and you know, how much is being spent on beef as compared to pork and chicken, you know, and yeah, the consumers are still there, and they're spending their money as they want good beef and stuff. So it's great to see those numbers.
Important has it been to the success of your ranch and making those investments on the state and national level?
You know, I think it's very important for all of us to contribute to that, and I know not everybody's in agreement on that, but when you see the numbers like this, and you see the demand, and you see how much is being spent on beef compared to pork and chicken and the other proteins and stuff, it's pretty impressive.
Well, again, we're on Western Ag Network. We'll have more of that recap and the results. We can get into finer detail, because I can't remember numbers very well. But, you know, as we're down here, it is a time when producers are putting up hay. A lot are getting ready to contract calves. You know, as a producer and a volunteer leader here in 2024, what's your feeling about the state of the cattle industry?
Well, I think it's very good. I mean, we come to these meetings, we should be home putting up hay and taking care of cows and doing things like that, but this is important too, and we gotta come and do what we can to support the industry. And you know, they got the video sales going on now, and I'm waiting to get home to kind of check actual prices, but I just hear it's awfully good and stuff, and they were just showing numbers that we're still going to decline our cow numbers for a couple more years, so we should have some real good times here if something doesn't pop up here and surprise us and wreck the market, but it's good right now.
Well, Jack, I know it's a busy day, and I know there's a committee you probably got to go sit in right now, but what's the last message you have for just our viewers and listeners tuning into the Western Ag Network today?
Well, just to be involved, and you know, we get away and do this stuff just to support our industry, and I'm not sure not everybody can get away, but they can still help support our industry and our organizations, and there's fewer of us all the time, and we need that support.
Well, Jack, thanks for joining us here today. We appreciate you taking a little time before you go sunbathe out on by the pool here.
Thanks, Lane.
Well, friends, again, it's been great catching up with so many leaders from across the nation, especially Western Ag Network country here this week in San Diego.
Western Ag Network on the road in San Diego at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association Summer Business Meeting. Brought to you by Ag Risk Advisors.